Welcome to Happeo Unmuted, the podcast where we speak openly about what it really takes to connect people at work. From internal comms and knowledge sharing to the messiness of change and the rise of AI, we go beyond best practices to unpack what's working, what's not, and what's worth rethinking. Our host, Bourgeault-Trickey, has spent over 10 years in internal comms, building and launching intranets for organizations in telecoms and finance. He now leads client services at Happeo, where he's helped over 120 businesses across the globe create and grow engaging digital workplaces that drive organizational goals and objectives. If you care about how people in your organization share, learn, and adapt, this is your show. And if you're looking for a modern digital HQ, you can find us at happeo.com.
Welcome to Unmuted, the podcast where we explore the messy, brilliant, and occasionally unfiltered world of internal comms, knowledge sharing, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Bourgeault-Trickey from Happeo. Thanks for joining us on this next episode. Today's guest is Denisa Karfikova, with over 12 years of progressive experience in internal communications, employee engagement, and change management. Great to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Jesse.
So I wanted to kind of jump in with our Unmuted Moments icebreaker, if you don't mind. Today's one, what we're going to use is, what's one moment that made you fall in love with the work you do or totally question your life choices?
Great question. So my background is in journalism, and I always wanted to connect with people and, tell their stories. So when I moved to the US to study, well, I realized it's going to be a little tough to be a broadcast journalist here with my Czech accent. So I pivoted into internal communications, and I never looked back because I just love how I can directly influence how people feel, helping people to connect with each other or helping them to understand the company goals and how it relates to their role. So on multiple occasions, at my first role at Capital One, I really saw this aha moment when it clicked for people and they were able to navigate a change in the midst of large transformation. So yeah, it's chaotic in a moment, and it feels like you're hashing fire drills every week, if not every other day. But I love to see the end results, and mostly I love the feeling when you see people feel valued as a result of your work, and when you get to see the employees spotlight or their side task work to be featured, and they're passionate about it, and then you're translating it to the rest of the company, sharing their passion. So they noticed that they've been noticed, and that really makes an impact. And so I think adding that meaning to people's jobs, I just love seeing these moments when they come to life, and it's really incredibly fulfilling, and I'm so grateful for these opportunities. So I have a lot of stories. I don't think there is one fundamental moment where I was oh gosh, this is it. But it's been these little moments, on multiple occasions where I was I really love doing this. And it goes back to my passion of telling people stories and connecting with people. So I think this was a great pivot early in my career.
That's great. I love hearing that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of wondering, from a follow-up question, do you do any kind of internal profiling at the organization? Do you sort of showcase leadership or any individuals and do that kind of stuff? I mean, I feel like it'd be a great translation for what you were looking to do.
Yes, definitely. I do a lot of storytelling as, journalists do. So spotlighting employees maybe who are new and giving them the opportunity to introduce themselves to the rest of the team or the department, and just doing these little snippets about them. So then when they interact with someone who is new and they never met before, it's a little bit easier icebreaker, because maybe that person saw their profile and they're oh, I saw that you love playing pickleball. Oh my gosh, I'm in a pickleball league. Where do you play? And that conversation happens naturally. With the leadership, right? I love bringing leaders to life, and then really showing who they are and what's their personality, and making them more relevant and human, because sometimes we see them as these people who are leading the organization, and sometimes we don't see them as approachable. So what I love to do is to humanize them. And so I find these little passion moments or day-to-day connection moments for the leaders to connect with the rest of the employees. And that then makes it easier for people to approach them or, see them more as they're like us and not them.
Yeah. And I mean, it's great. It's also another great way I've found at least to start being able to work with them for future tactics and things like that. So if I wanted a leader to be the one to deliver an important message, or if I want them to be the star of a video that we would need to record, that's always a great way to kind of get that relationship going behind the scenes too, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I was also wondering, you were mentioning the idea of like just seeing the results, and I was kind of curious, like, do you have any kind of standard way of doing any kind of impact measurements or anything like that maybe you'd be interested to share? Or I'm always curious to hear sort of like how that looks for the different teams I work with or the different clients I'm helping.
Yeah, I'm definitely data driven, and I like to measure my outcome and justify the value. So I think for a really long time this has been a hot topic, right? How do we measure internal communications?
Mhm.
And we've all been saying that. So I think I'm just repeating what most people already said, but we borrow these metrics from our marketing friends.
Right.
And so like we can prove the value, right? So I think for the past few years, I've been measuring like the traditional analytical data, how many people open it, how many people click on the links, what links they clicked on, how long did they stay there, or what was the path, how did they get to it?
Mhm.
And that helped me understand what content was interested or needed, and then maybe what wasn't landing the way I wanted it. In the past year, I pivoted a little bit, and I think it's been a hot topic among the internal communicators. It's to measure also the outcome, not just if they
Yeah.
click on it. So that they took the action. So then not just measure like if they click on it, but did they finish the training that we were talking about?
Yep.
Or if it's a digital transformation, did they start using the new digital tool, or are they still relying on the non-digital traditional pathways they were used to working with? And as with the change management, it's a small increments. You're probably not going to see a really big transition on a day one, but I think measuring these outcomes
Mhm.
rather than just pure data that might sound amazing, like 83% open rate. Like who doesn't love that?
Right.
I'm proud of it, and definitely like want to see the upper digit metrics. But then I also really want to make sure that the behavior and the actions that we are seeking to instill or change, that those are lending as well. And then I need to know if the actions are not being taken, so then I can tweak the communications to better support the outcome, or try a new tactic, right? Like I feel like we're innovators, and we get to experiment a lot. And once again, I'm so grateful for like being able to do that. You can't always take risks, calculated risks, but I feel like in this role, I can.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. It's always, like I said, it's always really fascinating to kind of see how everybody's doing it. It's always, there's similarities obviously, but then there's these varying degrees of difference for industry or size or maturity and all these kinds of things, right? So yeah, let's maybe shift over to another question. So we have kind of like the work behind the work. And so thinking about it in the sense of like when people think about your role, what's maybe one of the biggest things they misunderstand about what you do?
Oh, what a hot topic. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about internal communications is that it's simply about sending emails or writing newsletters or just just post it on the internet. So it's often seen as a tactical execution role, like nice to have, but not necessarily strategic.
Mhm.
Well, I'm here to disagree, because in reality, internal communications, it's just so much more than just messaging. It's a function that really deeply influences how employees understand the business or how they connect to the purpose and like how they show up in their roles every day. So we are strategic partners to the leadership, and we translate complex ideas, business strategies. Like, we have to make it clear. We really want to make it human so people actually relate to it and then they can act on it. So I found myself being this bridge between like the leadership and the employees, and I just like want to make sure that we're not just sending the messages, but that the messages are landing. So in my role, I often advise on the timing, on the tone. Like, I need to be aware of the context, and then I have to like manage the communications also through a lot of change. So I would say a lot of the internal communicators are change agents.
Right.
And like, we are there in uncertainty, in the crisis moments. We're there like during times where there's elevated mistrust and anxiety. And like, our job is to build the trust and like the invisible bridge between the leaders and the employees to create the resilience and like weather the storms. So that's a very impactful role. So it's not just about like what's written or, like what type of experience we are promoting this month, but we are behavioral scientists. Like, if it's done well, it drives the engagement, it aligns with the culture like in a really powerful way. It brings it life. So if any leaders out there are listening, I would say the key takeaway here I would like to stress is that it's not just about messaging, it's about driving behaviors and outcomes. And we really appreciate the seat at the table. And when we are brought in early and when we have the opportunity to have a discussion early on, so then we can shape the results that the leaders really want to see. And if we're brought early, we're able to do that.
Yeah, it's always been the case for me too, where if I'm partnered with a project manager from the beginning of the project versus, brought in at the last minute to make sure everybody understood what was going on, you get entirely different results, right? It's just a totally different experience for not only the project team, but for the employees who are having to go through that change, right? So
yeah, it's like the 100-year-old saying, right? When they're like, communications is not seen as critical until communications is broken.
Yeah.
And only then, but right, like from business strategy and like outcome perspective, I think you can have more impact and better results if you are proactive versus reactive. So once again, communications is key to everything, and while it's labeled as soft skills, if it was so soft, I think many more people will be much better at it. So I think that really it's a strategic role, and if leaders sees it as strategic, it has monumental impact on their business results, on their engagement, on how people feel about their company, the retention rates. I can just talk about this for hours. I'm very passionate about the business outcomes and how we influence those. But that goes back to the metrics, right? So maybe I should have mentioned it there. Like, all these areas are your analytical and business outcome metrics that you can also drive results towards.
Yeah. We talked about it earlier, obviously, but I was wondering too, maybe we can bring it up here too, is the idea that if you've been doing more of the qualitative kind of feedback. So you mentioned, I meant to say the quantitative kind of feedback. So we did, wait, no, I got it wrong again, which is a common thing, but it's like, I was thinking more along the lines of surveying. So quantitative in the sense of, are qualitative in the sense of being able to validate, like, are they ready? Are they excited? Are they, aware of the changes? Have you done any kind of measurement like that as part of your measurement strategies, or?
Yes. So I do partner in all my roles. When I was not engagement lead, some few roles I had a combined role where I was the internal comms lead and engagement lead.
Yep.
And on a few roles, these roles have been separated. So in either case, I collaborate with the engagement lead and make sure that I have access to like the employee survey, or that communication is a section of the survey. And then obviously I like to do audits here and there. If I'm in a new role, when I'm starting, right, like I'm looking at auditing to really understand at what phase are we at and what's working, because I'm not breaking what's working. And then like maybe where we have opportunities. So I think leveraging the qualitative surveys, it's definitely strategic input that you want to have in your toolbox. And then also that's another, part of your metric system that you get to see, because if you measure it year over year, and year one, your communication employee survey was like, communication's broken, leadership isn't clear, it's not consistent. And then the next year, you put a lot of efforts in these things, and then you see like maybe 3-4% increase. Like it's a real big win, because people often react to what they don't like or what is preventing them from being, effective. You don't get as much as positive sentiment. Like when things are working really well, you don't really hear about it because it's working and no one's complaining.
Right.
But when things are not going well, that's like when you really hear about it. So
Sure.
I also like to encourage people that are listening, like 3-4% increase in your survey, big win. It's a small number, but really it's a big win in a context, because it's probably much larger. It's just people are not complaining about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of differences too, going from one environment to another, as far as like the number of surveys that are used, and whether who's delivering the surveys and all that kind of stuff too. So there's a lot of strategy going into just even the survey approach, right? But yeah, that's interesting to hear that. I was kind of thinking about it as well at the micro scale of surveying. So you mentioned, obviously doing measurements for campaigns and different types of initiatives, but whether there was any kind of survey measurement there as well, like just along the way, like validating, are people ready for this change before you change, or things like that?
Sentiment surveys, yes. So I do use internal comms tool, and for example, on some change management communications, right? I always like to check the sentiment, so I leverage those sentiment surveys.
Right.
Just to get, like the quick pulse. Was this clear? Do you understand what's expected?
Yeah.
Are you ready for do you feel prepared? And then like that, not only like that helps me, because that's the two-way communications. We're not talking at people, right? We're talking with people, because we're in this together. And so when I'm pushing content on them, I want that back, the back loop feedback. So I think sentiment surveys are really good way to accomplish that very quickly in real time. And then like can also help you pivot really quickly, versus just like waiting for the change to hit the change curves, hit the resistance.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are then reevaluating when they hit the change curve resistance. So I think this could be one way to speed that process and maybe have a smoother curve resistance with checking on the pulse as you're sending these out. And from my experience, because if you have the survey with like, how do you feel about this? And then you have like thumbs up, thumbs down, or you have sentiment in terms of like smiley face, sad face, or like star rating, right? It takes them one click and it's like right there below their reading. So more of them will be prompt to fill it in than if you're sending them a separate survey about the whole program or about the whole transformation. That will be probably less inclined to fill that survey, and it will probably take also more time. So because the mental body, right? They're like, oh gosh, I have to make time for this survey. I have to be, focus on it. Versus like they're reading the content and then you have them right there. And they're like, okay, well, I feel good about it. Or like, no, I don't understand this. Like, you get it there.
Yeah, it's like you need almost like an automated poll system built into message delivery, right? Like just quick one question, maybe two questions, just get your quick feedback from them and kind of be able to move on. No, that's great. I appreciate the insight and the perspective there. Maybe that actually kind of transitions well into the next topic that I wanted to bring up, which was around technology, AI in the future, without the hype if we can help it, but we'll see. So it's, how do you see AI shaping internal comms and knowledge sharing? Are we being realistic or are we being delusional?
Wow, it's a hot topic across the board, not just in comms, like everywhere, right? So I think there's a lot of hype. And like, I think there are probably like two camps. Like one is people are excited about it. The other one, naturally, it's unknown. People fear it, right? So I think I'm one of those who is really excited about it, and I'm trying to get like ahead of the curve and like experiment with it.
Yep.
So I think it's starting to shift how we work in the internal comms, but I think it could be a good way. Like, I would describe it as like each of us now suddenly has a really good, capable intern. It can handle a lot of like the repetitive tasks, or like starting drafts for you, or it can like give you first version like of your message and like summarizing your notes. If you're a team of one, like right now I'm a team of one, I love like brainstorming ideas, or like I love getting the sentiment analysis. And you're getting it all like in real time, which before would take like matters of, like gathering people, asking them for feedback, and it just takes time and takes resources. So I think that like this could help us save hours, if not days. I would also say that, for example, like pulling the analysis or pulling the data, right? Like that was like pulling a tooth task for me, because I always had to rely on someone else to give me that. And now with the AI, I can ask for the analysis. I can engineer the prompt, and then it can pull the data from like all these available external sources. And then I can also really very quickly get the analytics from the tools that we're using, and then like compare, like, are we on par with the industry or this time in the moment as it relates to, the rest of the field or industry. So I think I love getting that. With that said, I think that we need to check what outcomes we're getting, because it does hallucinate. And it does produces a lot of errors. So I mean, I would say it's an intern. And as with every intern, you do have to do quality control. To address the elephant in the room, I don't think AI can fully take over communicators' roles, at least like not in this moment. It does not have the internal context. It doesn't understand or know what people are feeling. It's not going to land on the change if it doesn't have the context and the sentiment. It does not understand what's going on behind culturally. So, like I said at the beginning, what I love about this role is that I connect with people. AI can't connect with people in your organization. You have to do that. But it can give you the drafts, and sometimes they feel really stiff. Like, this is an example of like, you ask it to write like a social media post and gives you like all this corporate jargon. And while it's like technically correct, it's often like written with like the technical writing in mind. So it's missing that human connection and like the relatability, and like people see through that. It's not about like your posts have like all these M dashes. I think it's also a hot topic right now. Like, everyone's now suddenly scared to use M dashes because they're like, oh my God, like everyone's going to know I use AI. I think it's less about that and more about like it misses the human connection. And so I think like I will still be in charge of like reviewing and reshaping and making sure the tone and the message is right as I understand the internal strategy. And that's also like not something that's public or that many companies are comfortable putting into their AI. And again, this is a strategic business role. And so you have that understanding, and then you have the context, and then you are connecting with people and you're gauging for the sentiment that can replace. That I don't think that can be replaced. So I think our roles will be a little bit more strategic, and we'll be adding value in that way, like as an advisor to the leaders, telling the great stories, and then pushing the culture and the engagement. So I think I see that role evolving more towards that. And then having that help with the first drafts, or like the quick editing and proofreading, if you're like a team of one. So I think taking on like those tasks that could be automated and that are like stereotypical, I think that can do it really well. I also think from like ethical standpoint, and that's like the last point I have here to the AI, is that we have a really big problem, I think, when it comes to like the ethical place, because it's scanning all this content that it can get its hands on, and it wasn't always acquired ethically. And so I think like, where do we draw the line on copyrights? And I do think it's problematic because there are probably going to be some cases that are probably going to be highly visible as they touch people who have maybe resources to bring that to attention. But how do you know that the content that it produced for you isn't someone's word for word piece of work that you're now taking and perhaps you're slightly editing it, because again, human touch should come, like you should just not copy paste it, right? You should check for the tone and for the voice and make sure it lands with your values, with your company strategy. But where it's sad that like that one sentence that you kept there isn't someone's, copyrighted piece of work. So I think like that issue will raise more often, and I think there are probably going to be some high visibility cases that may like speed up finding a solution to this problem. But that's an area of concern that like I am trying to educate myself better and make sure that I don't land in a legal situation as it relates to the content that I get from the generative AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. I always felt like from an internal standpoint, you get a little bit more leeway, not having to worry so much about the scrutiny of review and copyright and all that kind of stuff. But it certainly is a topic of consideration when it comes to AI and all of that. So we'll have to wait and see sort of where that takes us. And then for the record, by the way, I was using M dashes before AI. So I just wanted to let you know.
I'm a big fan of N-dash that a lot of people don't use either, because they use the dash that's like right next to your zero.
Yeah.
And so I've been replacing those for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
The M-dash, I would use it occasionally, like in a headline, or things where you're supposed to use them. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's been this big sentiment in the community now. Now suddenly those of us who know which dash to use and when are afraid to start using them, because we don't want people to think that it's this AI. So I would say like, keep doing what you're doing. Everyone's using AI nowadays. But I think it's going to be helpful. It's going to enable us to be more strategic partners. I'm not scared of it. I don't think it can replace me, at least like not in a short term.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the other way to look at this too, and you kind of brought it up as well, is there's going to be so much change happening. And with all of that change, you need somebody to help support strategically to navigate that change, or to be able to understand how everyone's doing. And like you said, until those tools exist, which I don't really know how much there is out there at the moment, being able to do it at that scale, we need to have people to be connecting with people, right? So, well, yeah, let's maybe switch over to our next topic. So we're thinking about, something what's something you wish more execs understood about the employee experience? So it kind of ties into what we were talking about.
That is not just about like perks or programs, or like pushing this content that we just need to let everyone know about today, but it's about how people feel every day doing their work. It's shaped by communications. I'll die on that hill. And then, you need the clarity, and people want to be seen, heard, and trusted. So I think a lot of leaders emphasize like the big moments, think like all hands or company announcements. But from what I've seen, it comes to the small everyday interactions that really define the employee experience. Is my manager communicating clearly? And I think we're putting a lot of responsibilities now on the managers. So I think we have to like equip them and support them better, because suddenly, like in the past 3 to 5 years, they went from managing peoples to being therapists and being change agents and being communicators for the company, and so on, right? So it's a lot of responsibilities and scope that suddenly transform that role. So I think we need to support them better, but I think they are the ones who are translating like the why for people, because people feel more comfortable to talk to their manager rather than like a leader that they have minimal interactions with. So I think being clear and and like giving them like really good tools to understand the why, so then they're able to translate it, and people feel safe and like they can speak up. So I think that execs like really underestimate how much like their words, or sometimes even the chosen silence, can shape like the tone and the culture. Because if communications feel human and consistent and transparent, the employees like engage and they stay and they're committed. But if it's like inconsistent for extended period of time, or if it's really heavy top down with like not having the two-way feedback enabled in there, people like tune out, or like even worse, like they're filling the blanks with like their own assumptions, which is then breaking the culture so much. It's so much damage. So again, like that's where we go into the repair versus the proactive mode. So I'd say like also what I think I noticed in my 12 years was that some leaders don't want to be seen as like weak. So they like want to make sure that like they're firm on their stand. And I think that, and I respect that they're the leaders, and if they make a decision and they don't want their mind to be changed about it, we gotta follow, because they've been chosen to be the leaders for a reason. So I think that there's a time and place where you can have thoughts about it, but there's a time and a place where the decision has been made, and you have to go with it, right? So I think I respect that moment. I still think you can be empathetic and sound, human when you are presenting the tough, hard decisions. So I think coming in a human way will not make you weak, but it will make you relatable. So I guess if there's like one thing that I would like to really leaders to get, is that employee experience is communications. It's not just what we say, but it's about how we make people feel in the process.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like I think about what you just said, and it's sort of framed in my mind around the idea of like the employee experience is actually the employee's experience with their leadership is a large part of the employee experience. So being able to support that from a communication standpoint can make all the difference, not only for the managers, but for the employees as well. So it's kind of got that chain built into it, which is interesting. I'm curious if we maybe think about from a communication strategy standpoint, for you at the organizations you've worked at, did you typically have sort of a standardized approach for like change initiatives or for communications campaigns where you would work with leadership first? Like, was it a phased approach? I use the term like leadership toolkits. Did you do any of that kind of piece, or was it more of a little more organic, or what did that maybe look like for you?
So I think here I would say it depends. So in my role, I try really hard to build close relationship with the leader, or if there's more than one, with the leaders that I directly support. But then you have the extended leadership team, right? And you don't get to know them or work with them as often as like with your number one or 2 to 3 leaders that you work quite frequently. So I would say I have like a framework that I try to use to bring the other leaders that I might not have as close relationships with. So I try to connect with them, and then you have to, I think the way I drive the conversation with them is what's in it for them. So you have to really understand, like, what is that one thing why they do care about this, and then you go in that meeting with that one thing in mind, given you got it right. and then you can see, like, once they realize that this is going to enable them to do what they set out to do, they usually come along, and then you have that broader leadership team working with you instead of in silos. So once again, like, you're the dot connector, and you are connecting the leaders that should be on the same page and should be working towards the same goal with the rest of the company, because then you have unified messaging, you have unified strategy, and as a result, you have consistent unified communications that are then breaking down across different departments, giving the same message to the company. So there's no confusion, or there's the clarity and the consistency that people need and want in transformations or change periods. I don't know if that like fully answered your question, but I would say it's it varies on the type of projects. Some change projects are like one-offs, right? And then you work with certain leaders more than with others, depending on what type of department you sit at. But I always think this role is a human-centric role, and without your relationships, you won't be successful. So connecting with people and nurturing those relationships is what I think is one of the success metrics for being a good internal comms leader.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I completely agree with that. So yeah, well, thank you for sharing. Let's maybe switch over to one of our last questions here. So I was thinking, along the lines of, if your career had a tagline, what would it be?
Yeah, so I wrote this one down. So for me, the tagline would probably be: internal communications is how strategy becomes reality and how culture becomes felt.
Yeah, interesting. So from a culture standpoint, are you feeling like there's sort of an obvious link here between the internal communications function and the development of culture, or the establishment of culture at the organization? I'm kind of curious, like, from a measurement standpoint, what does that look like for you, or how are you able to kind of like showcase that to leadership and the ROI standpoint?
So I think measuring culture, it's very abstract. It's this big, scary world, right? So I think I like to break it down. What does culture mean, either to the leaders or to the company? So again, it goes to, you can measure it through the engagement survey. You can measure it through, are we seeing the behaviors changing? So let's say RTO, right? It's been a topic for the past few years. Like, first we're working from home, now we're being brought back to the office. So return to the office. How are you going to measure how it's impacting the culture? What is the sentiment among people? You measure that through the survey. Are they actually starting to come into the office, or are they like finding creative ways of like how to look like they're here, but they're not, but they're not. Are they leaving because they don't want to come to the office? Is it, so then again, like you measure, like, is it because they have personal situation that prevents them from getting into the office, or is it because they just don't want to? So I think like this is all sentiment, and it's hard to measure it. But the way I've been trying to approach from a communications measurement standpoint is leveraging the engagement survey, leveraging the data that shows whether the behaviors that the leaders want to see change, are they changing? And then, I feel like in this role, you have to be empath. You have to be empathetic and kind of find the middle ground where you're translating the business objectives from the leaders. And, we're all here because we need to drive business. So translating that to people, why these decisions are made. And I think if you can translate the why, people usually accept that versus like not giving them the reason and like not being clear and not really just having a clear purpose. And then taking that feedback from the people, like what is the impact to them, and then bringing that up back to the leaders and see if some of the impact could be modified or could be alleviated with some of the tools that we already have, or with with changing the tools as the situation evolves. So I'm usually in a position where like I'm the middle ground. I'm the middleman who is connecting the leaders with the people, and then translating the leadership outcomes to people so they understand the why, and then bringing the concerns from the people to the leaders so then they understand why there might be a resistance, and finding that sweet spot where most of the people are happy. It's a challenging task. It doesn't always it's not always easy, but it goes back to, I think, internal communications. It is a lot of behavioral science, understanding people.
Yeah. Well, I definitely like to see AI try and do what you just described. So it's a tough one, right? I'd like to just thank you again for joining us today for our call. And that's it for today's episode of Unmuted. If you'd like what you heard, rate, review, and follow. And feel free to drop it into your team chat or exec update. It's the easiest win you'll have all week. So, and hey, if your organization's still on mute when it comes to comms and knowledge, Happeo is here to help turn up the volume. So until next time, keep talking, keep listening, and whatever you do, stay unmuted.